The lights went out on Kepler Station at exactly 14:30 Galactic Standard Time. 8-year-old Tejo was in the middle of his math lesson when the entire mining facility shook like a giant had grabbed it and given it a violent shake. His teacher, Mrs. Kim, dropped her datapad and looked around with wide eyes. The emergency siren started screaming and red warning lights flashed everywhere. Through the classroom window, Tejo could see people running in the corridors outside. "Everyone stay calm," Mrs. Kim said, but her voice was shaking. "We need to go to the emergency shelter right now." But before anyone could move, the floor beneath them cracked open. A bright blue light shot up from below, and Mrs. Kim screamed as she fell through the hole. Tejo reached for her, but she was already gone. The other children were crying and screaming. The station shook again, harder this time. More cracks appeared in the walls and ceiling. Tejo knew he had to get out of there fast. He remembered what his father had taught him about emergencies. If something bad happens, Tejo, you run to the emergency bunker on level 7. You hide there until help comes. Promise me you will remember this. Tejo ran into the corridor. People were everywhere, pushing and shouting. Some were bleeding. The air smelled like burning metal and something else that made his nose hurt. He tried to find his parents, but there were too many people and too much noise. A man in a maintenance uniform grabbed his arm.
"Kid, you need to get to the escape pods now."
"I need to find my mom and dad," Tejo said. The man looked sad. "Kid, the reactor is going critical. We have maybe 10 minutes before this whole place blows up. You need to save yourself." But Tejo pulled away and ran toward level 7. He knew his parents would want him to be safe. The emergency bunker was the safest place on the station. His father had shown it to him many times. The corridors were getting emptier as he ran deeper into the station. Most people were heading to the escape pods on the upper levels. Tejo could hear explosions behind him, getting louder and closer. He reached level 7 just as another huge explosion rocked the station. The lights went out completely and emergency power kicked in. Everything was red and scary looking. The emergency bunker was a small room with thick metal walls. Inside were supplies for 20 people to live for 2 weeks. There were food packets, water recyclers, medical supplies, and sleeping bags. Tejo had memorized where everything was during his father's safety tours. He got inside and sealed the door, just as he heard the biggest explosion yet. The whole station shook so hard that he fell down. Then everything went quiet. Tejo waited for a long time. He kept thinking his parents would come and get him. He listened for voices or footsteps but heard nothing. After what felt like hours, he opened a food packet and ate a little bit. The food tasted like cardboard, but his stomach was making hungry noises. On the second day, he tried to use the communication system to call for help. But there was only static, no voices, no signals, nothing. By the third day, Tejo understood that something terrible had happened. His parents were not coming. No one was coming. He was alone on the station, and everyone else was probably dead. He cried for a while, but then he remembered what his father always said. "Tejo, you are stronger than you think. When bad things happen, you don't give up. You think and you survive and you wait for your chance." So Tejo made a plan. He would stay in the bunker and eat only a little food each day to make it last longer. He would drink small amounts of water. He would wait for someone to come and rescue him. On the 4th day, he heard something. It was not the creaking and settling sounds the dead station had been making. This was different. It sounded like engines. Tejo left the bunker and carefully made his way to the nearest window. Outside in space, he could see a ship. It was not like the human ships he knew. This one was longer and had strange curves. The metal was a dark purple color, and it had markings he had never seen before. Aliens. Real aliens. Tejo had heard stories about aliens, but humans had never made contact with any. His father said they probably existed somewhere in the galaxy, but space was so big that finding them would be almost impossible. Now they had found him. The alien ship docked with the station. Tejo could hear them moving around inside, their footsteps different from human ones. They were searching the station, probably looking for survivors or valuable things to take. He had to make a choice. He could hide in the bunker and hope they would not find him. Or he could show himself and hope they were friendly. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "Sometimes, Tejo, you have to take a risk to survive." Tejo walked to the main corridor and waited. Soon he heard the footsteps getting closer. Then he saw them. They were taller than humans with dark green scales instead of skin. Their eyes were yellow and much larger than human eyes. They wore armor that looked like it was made from some kind of metal mesh. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. The leader saw Tejo first. He was bigger than the others, with more scars on his scales. He stopped walking and stared at the small human boy. Captain Veltar, one of the other aliens said in a language Tejo did not understand. It is just a small creature. We should leave it, but Captain Veltar kept staring at Tejo. There was something in his yellow eyes that looked almost like surprise. Tejo did the bravest thing he had ever done. He walked closer to the aliens and said, "Hello. My name is Tejo. Are you here to help?" The aliens looked at each other. One of them, who seemed younger than the others, raised his weapon. "Captain, we should eliminate it now. Command will not approve of witnesses." But Veltar held up his hand. "Wait." He looked at Tejo again. "You are not afraid, small one?" Tejo was terrified, but he shook his head. "My father taught me that being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do what you have to do even when you are scared." Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. Wise words from such a small creature. He turned to his crew. "Mordak, scan the station. Are there any other survivors?" The younger alien, Mordak, used a device that beeped and flashed. After a few minutes, he shook his head. "No life signs, Captain. This one is the only survivor." "What happened here?" Veltar asked Tejo. "The reactor exploded," Tejo said. "Everyone died except me. I hid in the emergency bunker." Veltar studied the boy for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "You will come with us," he said. Mordak stepped forward. "Captain, the consortium has clear protocols about inferior species. We cannot—" "I am the captain of this ship," Veltar said, his voice cold and dangerous. "The boy comes with us." As they walked back to the alien ship, Tejo looked back at the station one last time. Somewhere in that twisted metal were his parents, his friends, his teachers, everyone he had ever known, but he was alive. And somehow he knew his real adventure was just beginning. 5 years had passed since Veltar found Tejo on the dead mining station. The 13-year-old boy was no longer the scared child hiding in an emergency bunker. He had grown taller and stronger, but more importantly, he had grown smarter. Tejo sat in the engineering section of Veltar's ship, the Wanderer, fixing a broken power coupling. His hands moved quickly and surely over the alien technology. When he first came aboard, he could barely understand how the simplest devices worked. Now he could repair systems that even experienced alien engineers found difficult. "You are doing it wrong," said Thesis, the ship's chief engineer. She was a blue-skinned alien with 6 arms, each one ending in delicate fingers perfect for detailed work. "The power flow needs to be reversed before you connect the secondary circuit." Tejo looked at the coupling again and shook his head. "No, Thesis. If I reverse the power flow first, it will create a feedback loop. The whole section will overload." He connected 2 more wires and pressed a button. The lights in the engineering section immediately became brighter and steadier. Thesis stared at the repair, then at Tejo. "How did you know that would work?" "I do not know," Tejo said honestly. "I just see how things should connect. It makes sense to me." This was the thing that worried and amazed the crew of the Wanderer. Tejo seemed to understand alien technology better than the aliens who built it. He could look at a broken machine and immediately see what was wrong and how to fix it. Sometimes he could even improve designs that had been used for hundreds of years. But that was not the most frightening thing about the human boy. Captain Veltar entered the engineering section. His scales were more scarred now, and there were new lines of worry around his yellow eyes. "Tejo, we need to talk." They went to Veltar's private cabin. The captain activated a device that would block any listening equipment. Over the years, they had all learned to be very careful about who might be listening. "The consortium has found us again," Veltar said. 3 ships are heading this way. We have maybe 6 hours before they arrive." Tejo nodded calmly. This was not the first time they had been hunted. "How many ships do they have with them this time?" 3 heavy cruisers. Each one has enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "And we have 1 old cargo ship with weapons that barely work," Tejo said. "They really want me dead." Veltar looked sad. "I should never have taken you from that station. I have made your life nothing but running and hiding." "You saved my life," Tejo said, "and now we save others." That is worth something. This was true. Over the years, the Wanderer had become more than just a hiding place for one human boy. It had become a symbol of hope for aliens who were tired of the consortium's cruel rule. Escaped slaves, political prisoners, scientists whose research had been banned, and rebels from a dozen different worlds had all found shelter aboard Veltar's ship. "Captain," Mordak's voice came over the communication system. "We are receiving a message from the consortium ships. They want to speak with you." Veltar and Taiho went to the bridge. On the main screen appeared the face of Admiral Zenkar, the consortium's most feared military commander. His scales were almost black and his eyes were cold as winter. "Captain Veltar," Zenkar said, "you have something that belongs to the consortium. Surrender the human creature, and we will allow you and your crew to live." "The boy is under my protection," Veltar replied. "Find someone else to bully." Zenkar's expression did not change. "You do not understand what you are protecting, Captain. That creature is not just another alien species. It is a weapon that could destroy the balance of the galaxy." "He is a child," Veltar said. "Look at your tactical display," Zenkar said. "See how we have positioned our ships? It is a perfect attack formation. No escape is possible. Your ship will be destroyed in exactly 4 minutes." Taiho studied the tactical display. 3 consortium ships had formed a triangle around the Wanderer. Their weapons were charged and ready. It was indeed a perfect trap. But as Taiho looked at the formation, he began to see something else. "A pattern. A weakness, Captain," he said quietly. "May I suggest something?" Veltar looked at him. Over the years, he had learned to trust Taiho's insights about military tactics. The boy could see patterns in space battles that even experienced commanders missed. "Speak," Veltar said. Taiho pointed to the tactical display. "Their formation looks perfect, but it has a flaw. If we accelerate directly toward the lead ship and then suddenly change course to starboard, the other 2 ships will not be able to fire without risking hitting their own vessels." Mordak shook his head. "That is suicide. We would have to get very close to their weapons." "Yes," Taiho said, "but their weapons are designed for long-range combat. At close range, they cannot track a ship moving as fast as we can go." "And then what?" Veltar asked. "Even if we escape their formation, they will still pursue us." Taiho smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Then we go to the asteroid field near the 4th planet. I have been studying the mineral composition of those asteroids. If we can trick them into following us there, we can use their own weapons against them." 30 minutes later, the 3 consortium ships were drifting helplessly in space. Their weapons were offline, their engines were dead, and their crews were trapped inside ships that no longer responded to commands. Taiho had guided them into the asteroid field, and then used a series of precise shots to trigger a chain reaction that created an electromagnetic pulse. The pulse had disabled all 3 ships without destroying them. "Impossible," Admiral Zenkar said over the communication system. His voice was filled with shock and fear. "No one has ever escaped the triangle formation." "Today someone did," Taiho said, speaking for the first time during the conversation. "Tell your consortium masters that the last human is still alive. Tell them I remember what they did to my people, and tell them that one day I will make them pay for it." As the Wanderer flew away, leaving the disabled consortium ships behind, word of the escape spread through the underground networks that connected rebels and outcasts across the galaxy. The story grew with each telling. The last human had defeated 3 consortium warships with just 1 old cargo vessel. More ships began seeking out the Wanderer, not to capture Taiho but to join him. A brilliant scientist named Kexara arrived in a stolen research vessel, bringing terrible news about what had really happened to Earth. Pirates who were tired of running brought their ships and their weapons. Former consortium soldiers who had grown sick of following cruel orders came looking for a new cause. Within a year, what had started as 1 ship protecting 1 human boy had become a small fleet. They called themselves the Free Coalition, and their leader was a 14-year-old human who could outthink consortium admirals and inspire fierce loyalty in beings who had never known hope. But Taiho was changing too. The boy who had once been afraid of everything was becoming someone who feared nothing. He studied military history, learned new languages, and practiced with weapons until he could fight as well as any trained soldier. Late at night, when the ship was quiet, Veltar would sometimes find Taiho staring out at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" the captain asked one such night. "I am thinking about Earth," Taiho said, "about my parents and all the other humans who died. The consortium did not just kill them. They murdered an entire species because they were afraid of what we might become. And what do you plan to do about it? Tejo turned to look at him. In the boy's eyes, Veltar saw something that made him shiver. It was not anger or hatred. It was determination, cold, patient, absolute determination. I am going to show them they were right to be afraid, Tejo said. I am going to become exactly what they tried to prevent. Tejo was 18 now, and he commanded a fleet of 200 ships. Aliens from 30 different worlds followed him, believing that the last human could lead them to freedom from consortium rule. They were right, but not in the way they expected. The Free Coalition moved through space like ghosts, appearing where the consortium least expected them, and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Under Tejo's leadership, they had freed slaves from mining worlds, destroyed weapons, factories, and rescued political prisoners from prison ships. But today was different. Today they were following coordinates that Kexara had found hidden in an old human data cache. Are you certain this is the right place? Veltar asked. He was older now, his scales more gray than green, but he was still captain of the Wanderer and Tejo's most trusted advisor. Tejo studied the scanner readings. They were in an empty region of space in the Omega Nebula, far from any inhabited systems, but his instruments were detecting something large hidden behind clouds of gas and dust. The coordinates are exact, Kexara said. The blue-skinned scientist had become the Coalition's chief researcher. According to the data cache, this facility was built by human refugees in the final days before Earth's destruction. As they flew deeper into the nebula, a massive structure became visible. It was a space station larger than anything Tejo had ever seen. The design was definitely human, but more advanced than any human technology he knew about. How is this possible? Mordak whispered. He was Veltar's second in command now, and one of Tejo's most loyal supporters. Humans were barely capable of interstellar travel when they were destroyed. That is what the consortium wanted everyone to believe, Kexara said. But I have been studying human development. In the 500 years before Earth's destruction, humans advanced faster than any species in recorded history. If they had been given another century, they would have surpassed even consortium technology. The station was called Genesis, according to the identification signals it broadcast. It had been abandoned for decades, but its automated systems were still functioning. As the Coalition ships docked, Tejo felt a strange excitement. This was something his own people had built. Inside, the station was like a museum of human achievement. There were laboratories filled with advanced technology, libraries containing the knowledge of Earth's greatest scientists, and manufacturing facilities that could build things Tejo had only dreamed of. But the most important discovery was in the deepest level of the station. Tejo, Kexara called over the communication system. You need to see this immediately. He found her in a vast chamber filled with thousands of cylindrical containers. Each container was filled with a glowing blue liquid, and floating inside each one was what looked like a small human embryo. What is this place? Tejo asked. It is a genetic bank, Kexara explained. These containers hold the genetic templates of millions of humans, men, women, children from every part of Earth. The humans who built this place were trying to preserve their species. Tejo walked among the containers, looking at the small forms floating inside. Each one represented a human life that could be born again. His people were not completely extinct after all. There is more, Kexara said. She led him to a computer terminal. The humans who built this place also developed genetic enhancement protocols. They were trying to unlock dormant potential in human DNA. What kind of potential? Kexara activated the computer display. Enhanced physical abilities, improved mental processing, better adaptation to different environments. According to these records, humans were designed to be a spacefaring species. Earth was just the beginning. Tejo stared at the data. Designed by who? That information is not in the database, but whoever did it, they gave humans capabilities that would not naturally develop for millions of years of evolution. As they explored more of the station, they discovered the full scope of Project Genesis. The humans who built it had not just been trying to preserve their species. They had been preparing for war. There were weapon designs that could destroy entire fleets, terraforming technology that could transform dead worlds into gardens and, most importantly, detailed plans for rebuilding human civilization across the galaxy. They knew the consortium would try to destroy them, Tejo realized. This was their backup plan. More than that, Kexara said. This was their revenge plan. Look at these tactical analyses. The humans who worked here studied every consortium, military strategy, every weakness in their technology, every flaw in their political structure. They were planning to come back stronger. Tejo spent days studying the information in the Genesis database. He learned about human history that had been hidden from him, about capabilities his species possessed that even they had not fully understood. The genetic enhancement protocols were particularly fascinating. According to the research, the modifications would not change what made him human. Instead, they would awaken abilities that had always been there, sleeping in his DNA. "Are you certain you want to do this?" Veltar asked. They were in the station's medical facility, preparing for the enhancement procedure. "We do not know what the long-term effects might be." "I am already the last human," Tejo said. "If this kills me, nothing is lost. If it works, everything changes." The procedure took 3 days. Tejo lay unconscious in a medical pod while alien technology and human science worked together to rewrite his genetic code. Kexara monitored every stage of the process, making adjustments and corrections as needed. On the 4th day, Tejo woke up. He felt different immediately. His vision was sharper, able to see details that had been invisible before. His hearing was more sensitive, picking up sounds from across the entire medical facility. But the most dramatic change was in his mind. Information flowed through his consciousness like water. He could see patterns and connections that had been hidden before. Mathematical equations that would have taken him hours to solve now appeared in his mind, fully formed. "How do you feel?" Kexara asked. "I feel more," Tejo said. "Like I was only using a small part of my brain before." That was when the alarm started screaming. "Consortium ships," Mordak's voice came over the communication system. 5 battlecruisers just dropped out of hyperspace. "They found us." Tejo stood up from the medical pod. His enhanced senses immediately analyzed the tactical situation. He could hear the engine patterns of the approaching ships, calculate their speed and weapons capacity, and predict their attack strategy. "How long until they reach us?" he asked. 12 minutes, Mordak replied. "That is enough time." Tejo's mind was working faster than ever before. He could see a dozen different ways to defeat the consortium ships, each one more elegant than the last. The battle that followed became legend among the Free Coalition. Tejo, commanding from the Genesis station, coordinated the defense with perfect precision. He seemed to know what the consortium ships would do before their own captains did. When Admiral Zenkar led a boarding party onto the station, Tejo met them personally. The enhanced human moved like lightning, dodging energy blasts and disarming trained soldiers with his bare hands. In less than 5 minutes, he had defeated 20 consortium warriors and captured their admiral. "Impossible," Zenkar gasped as Tejo stood over him. "No organic being can move that fast." "You were right to fear humans," Tejo said, "but you were wrong to think you could stop us." Word of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. The footage of an enhanced human defeating an entire consortium strike force was transmitted on every underground network. For the first time in centuries, oppressed species across the galaxy began to believe that the consortium could be defeated. But for Tejo, the real revelation was not his enhanced abilities. It was the knowledge he had gained from the Genesis database. He now understood exactly what his species was capable of, and he had the tools to make it reality. Standing in the control room of the Genesis station, surrounded by the genetic templates of millions of humans, Tejo made a decision that would reshape the galaxy. It was time to bring his people home. The galaxy was burning with war. Tejo stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Rebirth, watching as 3 star systems fought the largest space battle in recorded history. His enhanced mind processed information from thousands of ships across impossible distances, coordinating attacks and defenses with perfect timing. 2 years had passed since the discovery of Genesis Station. In that time, the Free Coalition had grown from 200 ships to 20,000. Entire sectors had risen in rebellion against the consortium, inspired by the promise that the last human could lead them to freedom. But the consortium was not giving up without a fight. Admiral Zenkar is leading the main attack on our position at Kepler Prime, reported Captain Wei. The leader of Taiho's tactical team, Wei was one of the new humans, grown from the genetic templates and enhanced like Taiho himself. 3,000 ships, including their newest dreadnoughts. Taiho nodded without taking his eyes off the tactical display. His enhanced abilities allowed him to track every ship in the battle, predict their movements, and coordinate responses faster than any computer system. What about the attacks on the Vega and Proxima systems? He asked. Both are holding, replied Commander Da-Yun, another enhanced human who had become one of his most trusted officers. But barely. The consortium is throwing everything they have at us. This was the final push. For months, both sides had been preparing for this moment. The consortium had gathered the largest fleet in their history, determined to crush the rebellion once and for all. The Free Coalition had responded by awakening thousands of new humans from the Genesis templates and building ships using the advanced technology found in the hidden station. Now they fought across 3 star systems simultaneously, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Taiho, Veltar's voice came over the communication system. The old captain was commanding a strike force near the edge of the Kepler system. I have bad news. Our scouts report that Zenkar has activated the Omega Protocol. Taiho felt his enhanced heart skip a beat. The Omega Protocol was the consortium's ultimate weapon, a technology that could destroy entire star systems by causing their suns to go supernova. Intelligence reports had suggested it existed, but no one had ever seen it used. How long do we have? Taiho asked. 6 hours before the device reaches critical activation, Veltar replied. If we cannot stop it, every inhabited planet in this system will be destroyed. Taiho's mind raced through possibilities. Even with his enhanced abilities and the thousands of ships under his command, stopping a weapon that could destroy suns seemed impossible. Then he realized something. The consortium was not just trying to win this battle. They were trying to commit genocide on a scale that would make the destruction of Earth look small. If they could not rule the galaxy, they would rather see it burn. All coalition forces, Taiho broadcast on the fleet communication system. This is your commander. The consortium has activated a weapon that will kill billions of innocent people. We have 6 hours to stop them. I will not lie to you, the odds are against us. But we are not fighting for victory anymore. We are fighting for the right of every species in this galaxy to exist. The response was immediate. Ships that had been retreating turned around and flew back into battle. Alien crews who had been ready to surrender found new strength. The Free Coalition had become something more than an army. It had become a cause worth dying for, but Taiho had no intention of dying today. Da-Yun, take the enhanced human units and hit their left flank, he ordered. Use the new ships with human technology. Wei, coordinate with Kexara's science vessels. I want every consortium weakness exploited. The battle intensified as the coalition forces pressed their attack. The enhanced humans fought with abilities that amazed even their alien allies. They could react faster, think more clearly, and coordinate more effectively than any warriors the galaxy had ever seen. But the consortium had advantages too. Their ships were larger, their weapons more powerful, and they outnumbered the coalition forces 3-1. As the hours passed, it became clear that conventional tactics would not be enough. The consortium fleet was too strong, and the Omega weapon was too well protected. That was when Taiho made a decision that terrified even his closest allies. I am going after the Omega device personally, he announced. That is suicide, Veltar protested. The device is protected by the entire consortium main fleet. No, Taiho said. It is the only way. He transferred to a small, fast ship equipped with the most advanced human technology. The vessel was barely larger than a fighter, but it was faster and more maneuverable than anything else in space. As Taiho flew toward the heart of the enemy fleet, his enhanced abilities reached their full potential. He could see the pattern of every ship movement, predict every weapon's discharge, and find gaps in defenses that seemed impossible. He flew through laser fire that would have destroyed any normal pilot, dodged missiles that moved faster than sound, and slipped past defense systems that were designed to stop entire fleets. Behind him, The coalition forces pressed their attack with renewed fury. Seeing their leader risk everything gave them courage they had never known they possessed. Teho reached the Omega device just as Admiral Zenkar's flagship moved to intercept him. The two ships faced each other in the middle of the greatest space battle in history. "Surrender now, human," Zenkar broadcast. "Even if you destroy this device, we have others. We will keep building them until every rebellious world is ash." "You made one mistake," Teho replied. "You thought fear was stronger than hope." He activated the ship's most powerful weapon and fired directly at the Omega device. But instead of trying to destroy it, he targeted its control systems with a computer virus that Kexara had developed using human programming techniques. The virus spread through the consortium's entire fleet in seconds. Ships that had been coordinating perfectly suddenly lost communication with each other. Weapon systems shut down. Navigation computers gave false readings. In the chaos that followed, the coalition forces broke through the consortium lines. Enhanced humans led boarding parties onto enemy ships, capturing rather than destroying them. Alien species that had served the consortium out of fear began surrendering, asking to join the rebellion instead. Admiral Zenkar's flagship was the last to fall. The proud commander who had hunted Teho for years found himself facing the enhanced human in personal combat. The fight was over quickly. Zenkar was a skilled warrior, but he was no match for human reflexes and strength enhanced by advanced genetic modification. As the admiral lay defeated on the deck of his own ship, he looked up at Teho with something like respect. "You have won this battle," he said. "But there are other consortium fleets, other weapons. This war is not over." "You are right," Teho replied. "But when it is over, it will be because we chose mercy over revenge. That is what makes us different from you." Instead of executing his greatest enemy, Teho had Zenkar taken prisoner. The admiral would live to see the new galaxy that the coalition was building. Word of the victory spread across space faster than light. In 3 star systems, consortium forces were laying down their weapons. Across the galaxy, oppressed worlds were declaring their independence. But the most important victory was not military. It was the proof that different species could work together, that enhanced humans could use their abilities to protect rather than conquer, and that even the mightiest empire could be defeated by those who fought for something greater than themselves. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by humans and aliens who had become his family, Teho looked out at the stars and smiled. The war was not over yet, but for the first time since he was 8 years old and hiding in an emergency bunker, he truly believed that his people had a future. 2 years after the great victory, Teho stood on the surface of a world that had once been nothing but rock and ice. Now it was green with earth plants, blue with clean water, and warm with artificial sunlight. The terraforming technology from Genesis Station had transformed hundreds of dead worlds into places where humans could live and grow. This world was called New Soul, and it was home to 50,000 humans who had been grown from the genetic templates. They were farmers, engineers, teachers, doctors, and artists. They were building a new human civilization among the stars, but they were not alone. Walking beside Teho through the streets of the colony's main city were representatives from 30 different alien species. The Free Coalition had become the Galactic Federation, and its capital was here on Earth's sister world. "The mining rights agreement for the Centauri system has been finalized," reported Minister Kexara. The blue-skinned scientist had become the Federation's chief administrator, helping to manage the complex task of governing 1,000 worlds. The Zolonian corporations will extract the rare metals, but 60% of the profits go to the local colonies for infrastructure development. Teho nodded. This was how the Federation worked. Instead of one species dominating others, everyone contributed their strengths and shared in the benefits. The Zolonians were the galaxy's best miners. The Valorians were master shipbuilders. The Thakari were brilliant mathematicians. Humans, it turned out, were natural coordinators who could see patterns and connections that helped different species work together. "What about the situation on Epsilon Prime?" asked Commander Daun. She was one of the enhanced humans who had become a leader in the Federation's military forces. "Resolved peacefully," Kexara replied. "The rebels who were causing trouble have agreed to join the Federation government." It turns out they were not really rebels at all. They were former consortium prisoners who thought we were another conquering army. This happened often. Many worlds still feared that the Federation was just another empire in disguise. It took time and patience to prove that humans and their allies really were different from the consortium. Director Taiho, a young human voice called. A girl who looked about 12 years old ran up to them. Her name was Mina, and she was one of the newest humans to be awakened from the genetic templates. The school wants to know if you can come speak to the children today. They have questions about the old Earth. Taiho smiled. The children were the future of humanity, and they were growing up in a galaxy very different from the one he had known. They would never have to hide or run or fight just to survive. Of course, he said. What kind of questions? Well, Mina said seriously, they want to know why the consortium was so afraid of humans. We do not seem very scary. That was a good question. Taiho had been thinking about it himself lately. Later that day, he stood in front of a classroom filled with young humans and several alien children whose families had chosen to live in the human colonies. They looked at him with curious eyes, waiting for answers. The consortium was not really afraid of how strong humans were. Taiho explained. They were afraid of how fast we learned and how well we worked with other species. In 500 years, humans went from barely understanding electricity to building starships. No other species had ever advanced that quickly. A young boy raised his hand. His name was Hyunwoo, and he was one of the enhanced humans like Taiho. But we are not trying to conquer anyone. Why did they think we were dangerous? Because they could not understand the difference between being powerful and being dangerous, Taiho said. The consortium used their power to control others. They thought that if humans became powerful, we would do the same thing. But we did not, said a small alien girl whose species had scales like Veltar's people. Humans made us free instead. That is exactly right, Taiho said. And that is why the consortium was wrong to fear us. They forgot that true strength comes from helping others, not from ruling them. After the class, Taiho walked to the memorial garden at the center of New Seoul. In the middle of the garden stood a simple monument made of metal from the original Kepler mining station where his journey had begun. On it were carved the names of every human who had died when Earth was destroyed. His parents' names were there, along with those of his teachers, his friends, and the 2,000 people who had lived and died on Kepler Station. Veltar found him there, as he often did. The old captain was very old now. His scales almost completely gray, but he still insisted on serving as Taiho's advisor. The council meeting went well, Veltar reported. The Andorian system has officially joined the Federation. That makes it 800 member worlds now. Any problems? Taiho asked. The usual concerns about human expansion, Veltar said. Some species still worry that you will eventually decide to rule them instead of working with them. Taiho touched one of the names on the memorial. They do not understand yet. This is not about humans ruling the galaxy. This is about making sure no species ever faces extinction again. This was the human doctrine, the founding principle of the Galactic Federation. Every species had the right to exist and grow and reach their potential. No one would be destroyed out of fear or greed. There is news from the deep space exploration teams, Veltar continued. They have detected signals from beyond our galaxy. It appears we are not alone in the universe. Taiho was not surprised. He had always suspected that other galaxies contained intelligent life. Hostile signals? Unknown. But the signal patterns suggest very advanced technology, more advanced than anything we have ever seen. Taiho nodded thoughtfully. Then we will need to be ready. Not for war, but for contact. If there are other intelligent beings out there, we should try to learn from them, not fight them. Even if they are hostile? Especially if they are hostile, Taiho said. The consortium thought the answer to everything was violence and control. We have to be better than that. As they walked back toward the city, Taiho thought about how much had changed since he was a frightened 8-year-old hiding in an emergency bunker. The galaxy that had once seen humans as a threat to be eliminated now looked to them for leadership and guidance. But the most important change was not in how others saw humans. It was in how humans saw themselves. They were no longer the species that had been destroyed by fear and hatred. They were the species that had survived, learned, and chosen to build something better. They were the species that had turned their greatest enemy into their closest ally, that had given freedom to the oppressed, and that had proven that different beings could work together for the good of all. That evening, Taiho stood on his balcony looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of their galaxy, unknown civilizations were watching and waiting. They might be friends or enemies or something in between, but whatever they were, humanity and its allies would be ready for them. Not with weapons of destruction, but with open hands and open minds. They would offer friendship first, protection when needed, and always the chance for something better. The child who had been hidden in darkness had become the man who brought light to the galaxy. The species that had been feared for its potential had become the species that helped others reach their own potential. In the end, the consortium had been right about one thing. Humans were dangerous, but not in the way they had expected. Humans were dangerous to hatred, dangerous to oppression, and dangerous to the idea that different species could not live together in peace. They were dangerous to everything that made the galaxy a smaller, darker, crueler place, and that was exactly the kind of dangerous the galaxy needed.